Michael Phelps is amazing, isn't he? 8 gold medals. Tell you how popular he is. Guy who works with Facebook was telling me that Facebook reckoned they added 5 million users over the Olympics because Michael Phelps said that he goes on Facebook. Now, question, how many of you would say, be willing to say, I admire Michael Phelps? Would be willing to say, I admire Michael Phelps? Me too. Here's the deal. Somewhere out there this summer, there was a kid watching Michael Phelps, and what happened to him went way beyond admiration. Somewhere out there, and there really was this kid, and none of us knows who it is yet. One day we will. But somewhere out there was a kid, when he watched Michael Phelps, his heart started pounding, and his mind started racing. And he said to himself, what Michael Phelps did, I could do. The way he swam, I could swim. Where he's standing on that podium one day, I could stand. And right now, while you and I sit here, that kid is going to the pool every day. He is reading articles. He is watching videos. He is looking for a coach. He actually wants to become like Michael Phelps. He actually wants to do what Michael Phelps has done. He is not just an admirer of Michael Phelps. He's a follower. Now, I will applaud what Michael Phelps did, but it's not going to change my life. I have not been in a pool since the Olympics. I'm an admirer. I'm not a follower. There's a big difference. An admirer is impressed. A follower is devoted. An admirer applauds. A follower surrenders. An admirer approves. A follower obeys. A lot of people admired Martin Luther King. Some marched with him. Not many went to jail with him. Not many had their houses bombed as he did. A lot of people admired Mother Teresa. Not many followed her to live among the destitute and the dying. When you come to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew talks about 2 groups of people, and there's a dynamic that kind of runs throughout the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus begins to teach, and we're told when he saw the crowds, he went up to the mountainside. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach. 2 groups. One is the crowd, and there's lots of them, and they're very impressed by Jesus. In fact, when he gets to the end of his message, we're told when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as their teachers of the law. The whole crowd admired Jesus. But while he was teaching, something happened in the hearts of a few of them that went way beyond admiration. For a few, while Jesus was talking, their hearts started pounding, and their minds started racing. And something deep inside them said, this is it. This is what I have been longing for my whole life, to be cleansed and forgiven of all my sin and mess, to know God, to have courage, to have a life beyond the constant worry and fear and anxiety, to not be a slave anymore to sexual desire or money or people's approval or success, to be a part of God's work in my own little way to redeem the world, to have confidence beyond death. I must have this. I would rather have what this man has and give up everything else in the world than have everything else in the world and give up this man. Therefore, I will pay any price. I will do whatever he wants me to do. I will go wherever he tells me to go. I will be whatever he says I should be. I am leaving the crowd. I am not just an admirer. From this day on, I will live my life as a fully devoted follower of this man. And they'd go home that night and they couldn't sleep. And they'd wake up the next morning and they'd be captivated by the same thing. The whole crowd admired Jesus, but every once in a while, somebody in the crowd wakes up and crosses a line and says, I will follow. Now, of course, Jesus knew this would happen. And one of the things that Jesus is constantly doing is challenging people to move from admirer to follower. And generally, that move involves some kind of action, some price to pay, something quite concrete. John 3, you all know the story. A Pharisee named Nicodemus came to Jesus by night, said, "Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher who has come from God. No one could do these miraculous things if you were not with him." John tells us he came by night, most likely because he did not want anybody to see him. And Jesus says, "You must be born again. You must become my follower. You must publicly identify with me." And eventually Nicodemus does. When Jesus dies, Nicodemus publicly claims his body, places it in a tomb, becomes his follower. Sometimes people don't. Rich young ruler comes up, and the text says he fell on his knees before Jesus and says, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He's an admirer. He falls to his knees. He calls him good. Jesus says, "Go sell everything, give the money away, and follow me." And that's the deal breaker. The rich young ruler was ready to admire him, but following, where it would interfere with his life, his financial life or security or something, that's where he drew the line. There is in the New Testament a kind of a natural progression as people are coming to know Jesus. They begin as strangers to him. And then from strangers, they become admirers. And then from admirers, they may become followers. And of course, at each one of those points, people may decide that they're not going to go any further. Pilate does not become an admirer. Herod does not become an admirer. Rich young ruler does not become a follower. But I think what has happened in churches, especially in America in our day, is that we have added an additional category, and that category is users of Jesus. Okay, now we never put it that way. But in many, many, many people's mind, there is a kind of an alternative relationship with Jesus that kind of goes like this. I want to use Jesus to get into heaven when I die. And there's a deep problem with the gospel and the way that it has been presented, because for many, many people, the gospel has become the proclamation of the minimal entrance requirements for getting into heaven when you die. Now again, we never put it that way. But it'll go something like this. How do you know you're going to go to heaven when you die? And of course, there's little, if any, discussion about what kind of community heaven might be and what kind of person might I need to be to actually enjoy being in heaven. It's just thought of in this cartoon way as kind of the pleasure factory, and hell is kind of the torture chamber. And how do you know you're going to get into the pleasure factory? Because God's going to get people out. And the gospel is, you've been trying to earn your way in, so don't do that anymore. Get on the grace plan, believe the right stuff about an arrangement that has been made for you, and then you have obeyed the minimal entrance requirements for getting into heaven when you die. And then you become a user of Jesus. And of course, there's no intrinsic connection then to being a disciple, to being a follower. Talking in this session about, is your church producing followers of Jesus, disciples, or just Christians, commonly understood? A Christian, as commonly understood, I think, is somebody who identifies with a religious subculture. So, this is our team, and then the Buddhists are another team, and the Muslims are another team, and we like it when more people join our team. It's somebody who believes they're going to heaven when they die because they accepted an arrangement to get them in. But discipleship, making a serious intention to obey everything Jesus said, making a serious intention to do what Jesus said to do, is treated as largely an option. Kind of extra credit. And churches are full of this kind of Christian. And then church leaders who spend a lot of time trying to remotivate or re-excite them so that the church can be successful. And it gets tiring for everybody. It is interesting, I think, that the New Testament uses the word Christian only twice. And it actually originated as kind of a derisive nickname. It uses the word disciple 268 times. It's a lot easier to make a Christian, commonly understood. But the New Testament is a book about disciples.